Hey everybody, what's up? It's your girl Tadria, and welcome to another episode of Sisters. And here we are serving injured souls to encourage, rejuvenate, and strengthen your spiritual healing, one seed, one question, and one conversation at a time. Hey, guess what, y'all? We have an awesome episode for you guys today. I am surrounded by my family, and we are going to have an interesting conversation on forgiveness. So, to one side, I have my niece Maya. Tell everybody what's up.
What's up?
I have my baby boy Quentin. Tell everybody, hey.
Hello.
I have my mom. We just gonna call her mom.
Hello.
I have my oldest, Todrick. Tell everybody, hey.
Yo.
And my daughter-in-law, Kenzie. Tell everybody what's up, girl.
Hello.
Okay, so we're not gonna prolong the time, and what we're gonna do is we're just gonna jump right in. So we're gonna start with whoever wants to go first. Just raise your hand and speak. So my first question is, what does forgiveness mean to you? Okay, Mama, you got it.
All right. When you forgive, you have to forget because that's what I was always taught. If you don't forgive, if you haven't and you haven't forgotten, you haven't forgiven.
So just because you forgive somebody doesn't necessarily mean that you have to forget, because you're not always going to forget what somebody do to you. So if I walk up and step on your toe, you might forget. You might forgive me for stepping on your toe, but you're not going to forget that I stepped on your toe. So there's kind of a thin line between forgiveness and forgetting.
No, it's not. It depends. You can a person can do something to you and you forgive and forget. And it is the context or the context of what's done to you that you forgive and forget. Because certain things people do or say to you that kind of really kind of harsh and really is kind of hard to forgive. But the Bible says we must. I'm working on it.
I mean, if you don't forget, doesn't that mean that you haven't completely forgiven them?
Not necessarily. Just because you don't forget doesn't mean you haven't forgiven them, because sometimes you remember what they've done to remind you to forgive. So sometimes knowing and understanding the wrong that somebody's done to you helps you to forgive them even more. Or it helps you to put somebody else in position to forgive. Maya, what's your thoughts?
I would agree. I do think, I think forgiveness is a hard step. I think that forgiveness starts with God first. I think it starts with forgiving yourself. And then I think that to truly get to forgiveness, the person that hurt you would have to be in the mindset of understanding. They'd have to be ready for that conversation to hear where they went wrong.
So you're talking about forgiveness in terms of confronting the person that did you wrong.
Yes.
Okay, I can see where you're going with that. I'm going to piggyback off that in just a second. Son, what you got?
I personally don't believe in forgiveness because not everyone deserves to be forgiven. Not every issue is something that deserves to be, oh, well, I'm going to be all high and mighty about it. I am a firm believer in holding on to my grudges in a healthy manner. I'm not obsessive. I don't constantly stay angry about it, but I also don't forget the fact that someone did, in fact, wrong to me or do wrong by me. And that's not easily forgivable. You have one chance.
He's not wrong.
If I treat you the way I expect to be if I treat you the way I expect to be treated, and you in fact go out of your way to hurt me or cross me or do anything by me, you wasted your one shot at attempting to be in my life, be my friend. Nah, I'll forgive you in like 3 years' time. It just takes me longer.
Okay, so I can understand that. And it's an open forum, it's an open platform. So this isn't the place where we judge. So this is clearly a judgment-free zone. So what the Bible says about forgiveness is that you're supposed to forgive your brother 70 times 7. Forgiveness is not necessarily, not even necessarily, forgiveness is not a want. Forgiveness is not an ask. Forgiveness is clearly a command in the Bible. But that's where we as Christians understand the different levels and the different types of forgiveness. But when it comes to non-believers, they have a different approach to forgiveness. So, Todrick, because you feel like forgiveness is no such thing, are you speaking from a point of no longer believing, or are you speaking of a point from, yes, I believe, but I don't believe that I should have to forgive you because you're degenerate and I just said you did and I'm holding on to it?
The latter. I just personally don't believe that because God or anyone told me that I should forgive you off the premise that I need to be a better person doesn't dictate my beliefs as an individual. I believe that I should, even with my faith included, have the executive decision to decide if I want to forgive you or not based off of the off chance you may or may not do it again, or because I am a higher person, better person, nicer, whatever. It's not the point. It's the principle of just be a nice person. If you weren't nice to me, there's a good chance you won't be nice again. I'm not about to go through it.
I get it from your perspective. Anybody want to elaborate on that or piggyback?
Well, I'd just like to ask you, is there any, depending on what the person did to you, are you going to consider forgiveness?
Mm.
It stays on my mind, but I forgive as I feel. I forgive people as I see fit. Once I'm through certain stages of my life where you're no longer an imminent issue, or no matter if you come back or not, you won't cause a problem. You won't be a problem if you're back in my life. It doesn't matter what you do because I'm fine. You can't mess up my mindset. You can't come into my head. You can't be something I dwell on. You're just a back thought. And if they do come back, you remain a back thought because I'm going to keep in mind that you have hurt me prior. So for me, it's basically starting from ground one. I got to re-know you, re-figure you out, re-become friends, and re-establish stuff.
But if somebody do something to me, I like your thought, but depending on what they did, I'm trying to think, I wouldn't even want that person back in my life, stay a distance. And, that way I'm working on being a better person to say, but I would prefer, what you did, apologize.
Okay, Maya, what you got?
I think, and I agree with what Tydra said. I do believe that sometimes when people do hurtful things to you, an apology is just not enough. I'm sorry, it's just not enough. It has to go deeper than that, which is what, when you asked me the first time about communication and having that conversation with that other person, and that other person having the heart and the mind to take what you're about to say to them, tell them how you hurt me, what you said or what you did, and not just say, I'm sorry or I apologize, I understand where you're coming from. No, really understanding what it is that you did wrong.
Okay.
And how that affected me. Again, it's more than just about the apology. It's putting yourself in that person's feelings, physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally. Because there are some things that break us down physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, where there is no comeback. There is no, I can't accept you right now.
Okay.
It's going to take me a long time for us to get back to where we were. And like Todrick said, we're going to have to start from ground zero.
Okay, and I get that. And this brings me back to the previous segment that we did on forgiveness, where I asked the question if everybody remembered the movie and the book, The Shack.
I've never seen it.
I can't recall.
Okay, so in the movie The Shack, which is as well as this as was in the book, the movie The Shack was literally a book about forgiveness, a movie about forgiveness. So in the movie, what happened was there was a gentleman who, if I'm not mistaken, he started out as, he wasn't necessarily a non-believer, but he married a woman that was a believer. And her reference to God was, she always called him Baba. And that's what she called her father, right? So her reference for God was always Baba. Well, what happened in The Shack was, if I'm not mistaken, the lady died or something like that. I don't remember. Don't quote me on that. But the main focus of the book was the man's baby girl was kidnapped, sexually molested, and murdered, right? So in the process, when the man was on the fence about whether or not he was going to remain a believer or he was on the verge of just saying, you know what, God, you left me, I'm done with you. And he was literally on the verge of walking away and turning his back from God and becoming an unbeliever. He ended up walking through the steps and the different phases of grief, so to speak. He went through anger, he went through mourning, he went through regret, regression, depression, all of that. So he went through the multiple phases of depression, and he went through the different entities of who God was to him, how God is our friend, how God is our mother, how God is our father, how God is our priest, right? So at the end of it, he was led to a point where God explained to him, or the images of God basically helped him understand, you know what, you're my child, I'm your father, and as your father, I love you, I forgive you. I can't just throw you away because your brother or your sister hurt you, because your brother or your sister or your friend or your cousin is also my child as well. So because I forgive you, I also have to forgive them. And I understand that they wronged you, but that's also my child, right? So I can't just throw my child away because my child hurt you. And because of who I am, not me personally, but because of who God is, he has to forgive. So that's basically what the movie The Shack is all about. So you have he was given the option to choose to forgive, but he was shown the different aspects of what happens when you don't forgive, as well as the different aspects of what happens when you do forgive. Okay, Taldrick, what you got?
From since I do have faith and I'm a part of the Christianity community, and I understand this from both a biblical and outsider's perspective, from the outsider's point of view, to give that little intake, you could argue you can argue that they wouldn't understand forgiveness in that way with that example, for the simple fact of most people who don't understand Christianity argue the simple question of why the most benevolent person in quite literally anything of existence can just forgive people murdering other people without real consequences. Because if you can just sit there and have this almighty, unexplainable magical power to Thanos snap somebody out of existence because you're God, why don't you just rid us of the things that make us less inhuman, less, inclined to be empathetic, apathetic, murderous, heinous heretics? Like we've had historically a long line of people just being crazy, reckless, murderous, and sometimes they get away with it. Realistically, they just rot in jail.
Okay.
But you have someone from an outsider's point of view, you have a benevolent being such as God, his son Jesus, and that entire gospel line. Someone wouldn't understand all that because from them, they want the I'm not gonna say they necessarily want it, but for them, someone without faith, they're just in ignorant bliss. They don't know what else is out there that could hurt them. They don't know what they could and can't believe in. They don't know what's out there to believe in. So they're just living life in ignorant bliss. Hence why they argue why they don't believe in it. There's not much besides science and then faith that's tangible for someone to trust outside of all the different sources, media outlets transferring everything to fit their needs. Modern society, like if you ask anybody my age on what they think of Christianity, they're going to say they've been wronged by social media, which is their fault for looking there. But you really don't have a lot of sources unless you have a good church family member or some actual gospel Christianity, something religious related source to go to.
Okay. Okay. So with that being said, how would you help somebody your age, your generation that doesn't believe? How would you help them understand how to forgive or the importance of forgiveness?
You can't.
You sure?
Yeah. You would have to start at a very young age. Someone my age has already been stuck in their ways. They've already established, they've already figured it out, they've gone out of high school, they've gone through college most likely, or they're in college. Being in your young 20s, like you are honestly in that category of this is where I'm going to go most likely for the rest of my life. This is my mindset, this is my game plan. And the only thing they take you out of that mindset is a dramatic change. Either a relationship, something happens to you tragic, so your faith changes. Maybe something happens to a family member, so you reach out and you go looking for something. But you won't get out of your ways until something literally dramatically snaps you out of it.
I like that. What you got?
And I agree with everything that you said, but to add to that, sometimes you have an encounter. We encounter people in our lives that we never thought we would cross and encounter. And those people sometimes have the ability to change your heart.
Yes, that's true.
And give you that faith. And the only person that can send you that person is God.
My. I agree with that.
Yes.
I'll agree.
So it may not always be circumstances. I don't think God would purposely set us up in circumstances where it might hurt us to change us. Sometimes you're caught up in a position where you might have the most happiest day, and the person that encountered or whatever they said to you, the conversations they had, and then that might be the angel that walks you through that moment in your life to change you.
Come on, girl, you better preach.
So
I'll accept that.
Yeah.
But to add to it, I'd still argue that while it is up to circumstance and or anything could really be up to it to jolt you out into a different direction, I will say it's not always bad to accept pain. Like, yeah, bad things happen, but sometimes, as much as it sucks, that's the worst, best case scenario for them. Like, losing someone, that hurts, that sucks, but losing that person could put you on the path to maybe you want to run a company, maybe you want to become a better person in the world, so you start donating money to save an orphanage or something. Some realistic goal. That's hypothetical. Everybody shoots towards charity or some jazz.
That's really not all that hypothetical, because the Bible does say it was good that I was afflicted.
Right.
Yeah, so pain and suffering isn't always bad because like you learn from it. Some people are meant to get hurt, and as much as it sucks to say, you got to suck it up and realize that fantasy worlds are meant for movies. Fantasy worlds are meant for entertainment.
Well, could you think of it like this in a way that if somebody is suffering or going through trials, if you're going through a trial,
It's a test.
and a test,
You got to pass it or fail it.
however, but hold on, you're going through a test, you pass it, you encounter me, and the exact same test you went through is what I'm going through now. So you're a living testimony for me. You went through it, God got you through it. I'm going through it, so I'm looking for somebody to give me that inspiration. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but in that
To help
scenario,
me
I'm either
through
a
that.
crutch or I'm a gateway.
Oh, you better preach. Oh, mama's baby. Come on.
But as a believer, I can trust that God is going to take me through that crutch or that gateway, that he's going to get me through it.
Come on.
That's true.
Trust the process. Told from my auntie.
Oh, and it's good to know I taught somebody something in the room.
It's hard to face that, but God puts these challenges in front of us for a reason. And it's just for maybe a couple of years ago, I was offered a challenge, and the challenge that was put before me, it scared the stew out of me. I've heard people always talking about, well, God told me this, or God told me that. You know, preachers always saying it, and I'm thinking, you a minister, how can God tell you so much? For some people, God told me, you know. I'm not saying I'm a non-believer, because I do know God talks to people. So this was Sunday morning, about 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm asleep. It's like I felt something shake my shoulder and woke me up. And I'm thinking I left the TV on too loud. I heard words, a poem being rattled off. And I'm looking, I'm going and turning the TVs down because I have a habit of leaving the volume up. So when I turn the TVs down, I continue to hear this voice. And as the voice kept repeating these words, he said, "You need pencil and paper." I'm looking around, I started to get fearful. And then I realized this is the Holy Spirit and it's speaking to me. And my neighbor, and we were close, we went,
No identifying. No identifiers.
well,
This lady.
I went to school with the fellow. And during the process of this, there was a great grandbaby. And by the time I realized what was going on, ambulance flew down the street. And my thing was, Lord, let whoever's in trouble or hurt be okay. But then I thought about there was no siren going. All you saw was red lights. But at the same time, I'm steady taking dictation of what this voice, the Holy Spirit, was telling me. And about 2 days later, he come to himself and called me to let me know what had happened. And I read that poem, and all I could do was shake, shiver, and crack. What is this? Am I deserving of this type of thing? And I had to talk to my pastor. See, God gave me these words for a reason, but that was the most frightening experience that I have ever been through. But I thank God for letting me go through this, because that gave me a sense of self-worth, that I am God's child. I mean, I knew this all the while, but that was my proof. So, he takes us through different challenges for different reasons.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I think I'm almost speechless behind that one. Okay, young man, what was your thought process on forgiveness from your point of view when it comes to a believer? Because you're the youngest in the room. So how do you think forgiveness affects other people?
All eyes on you, kid.
You're not sure? Okay, he's not quite sure.
Cat's got his tongue.
I cannot with these kids today.
Well, I have a question.
Okay, what's your question?
So my question is, speaking of forgiving, does the healing start before or after?
All of the above.
And during.
Right. So when it comes to forgiveness doesn't just start because you say, "Oh, I forgive you." You have to mean it. The Bible also says, from the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So if your heart says, "I forgive," and then your mouth says, "I forgive," then okay, you're ready to forgive. But there's also some pain that comes with forgiveness too. And also you have to remember, just because you forgive somebody doesn't mean whatever they did to hurt you is not going to continue to hurt you. It's not going to hurt you. You have to heal from it so that it doesn't continue to affect you. So it's still a road and it's still a process that you go through when it comes to forgiveness. Are you going to remember it from time to time? Absolutely. Is it going to hurt every time you remember? For a minute, but it's not going to hurt all the time. And that's how you know that you've truly forgiven, because you're going to reach a point to where, yes, this used to bother me. Yes, this used to affect me, but it no longer affects me the way that it does. But there's a process to that. You have to allow yourself to be willing to forgive, to be open to forgive, and to understand in your own right why it is you're forgiven. And just because the person that did you wrong, they may not always be open to having a conversation with you about what they did to you, because that goes back to our very first segment about perception versus reality. In their mind, they may not have hurt you. In their mind, they may not have done anything to do you harm. Or they may not realize that they did something to hurt you, or realize that they did something to cause you harm. So if they don't perceive your reality of pain, they can't understand or accept your reality of you need to be forgiven. Does that make sense?
It does.
So sometimes you have to be able to forgive a person without that I'm sorry, because you're not always gonna get it.
It's not always easy to just accept someone for the heck of
You
it
got
and
that right.
shake it off your shoulder
Yeah.
because if we're being, because like a real life example, I don't like confrontations. Never have, never will. I don't like confrontations. And honestly, if anybody, if anybody was to ask anybody who knows me over the course of me being on this earth for all 22 years of my living, I don't talk that much on a daily basis.
We know.
Even on my best day, I don't talk a lot. So
Not at all.
there would be most, I could honestly say, growing up, you could count most of my conversations in a month. Yeah, in a month. Growing up, you could probably count most of my conversations on two hands.
Okay.
And that's me being like, and that's a good month. That'd be me on a good month. But I'm saying for like my situation, because I used to have the hardest time talking to you, for instance,
Yeah,
mother.
you're right.
And like even now, I still not say because we had our issues, we had our spouts and spats, but even now, sitting next to you, it's not an issue. I'm not angry at you, but like I'm breaking out in sweat. And it's not even anything to do with you, but just sitting next to you and talking to you when most of my memories of us talking was me just being silent and getting yelled at, my perception. Because I'll give credit. I'm a dramatic person. There would be plenty of times where if someone's just talking to me, I perceive it as yelling or a confrontation of some sort that I wasn't able to forgive. There's a lot of people I have issues with just because I couldn't perceive how they were trying to talk to me. And most people, I'm a weird case. Not a lot of people know how to attune themselves to my type of personality.
Okay, I can understand that. And y'all, guess what? This is an excellent place for us to hang our hats. We have had a wonderful conversation about forgiveness. I am excited about this conversation. I am pretty sure that we may have a part two, no promises, but I am expecting a part two because we literally only got to one question. So this may have to come in a wave. But listen, y'all, guess what? Just remember, this is a um, outlet for open conversation so that you can feel safe. And don't forget, we are just somebody trying to tell everybody about somebody who can save anybody. Check us out next time, guys. Have a good evening. We'll talk to you later. Say bye.
Bye.
Woo!